The branding shows Apple has adjusted to the current smartphone market, where big overhauls are rare. Apple's S-year iPhones never went away. It's just stopped advertising them. Apple had a lot of... So I tend to agree here. I feel like in tradition, they probably should have named this one iPhone 12s, but I think they know there was more excitement by calling it 13 or whatever. It's a little cleaner because Google's not doing Pixel 4, 4S, 5, 5S. They're doing Pixel 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, yeah. The next one's from the Wall Street Journal, and maybe Michelle can steer us through this one. The Wall Street Journal is on a hot streak of creating a hot mess over at Facebook, and specifically a gentleman by the name of Jeff Horowitz apparently has an internal source at Facebook who's providing internal documents of multiple kinds that he's now releasing on a daily basis here. For the past 4 days, Wall Street Journal's been writing heat-filled headlines that painting Facebook as very untrustworthy. And he says, there's more to come. And he's got in his Twitter bio, if you work at Facebook and you want to send me stuff, here's my personal cell phone number. And so one question here is, why is the Wall Street Journal on a mission against Facebook? And who is leaking the information to the Wall Street Journal? Who is the mole? Who is the leaker that's giving Jeff Horowitz these internal documents? For example, one such document was a presentation reportedly shared to senior leadership that says Instagram is hurting young girls, and we know it. And what are we doing about it? And really, not much was done about it, and the likes. So, similarly, internal documents show that Facebook's own research found that a 2018 change that they made to encourage positive interactions, and by the way, kudos for that, but had the opposite effect as was intended. It had negative reactions, and even in realization of this, and as a result of their own research, finding that it says Zuckerberg resisted any fixes, even in light of the fact that there were negative reactions to whatever this change was. So I had asked, we have the beautiful luxury of having Michelle join us nearly every day, which we're incredibly grateful for, who works at Facebook in the kind of comms PR role, of which there's hundreds and hundreds of people in Facebook who work in, this is a company that has, huge teams of people who work in comms and PR. And they have, they're all like a government practically. They have to coordinate, and they are very strategic and have a process for how they handle these kinds of things, and very, very intelligent, and for very important legal reasons. So, with all the respect in the world, we're hoping Michelle, at some point they're going to make a decision how they're going to respond to the Wall Street Journal and their hot streak of recent headlines, trying, painting a very unflattering picture of Facebook. And I think I speak for everybody that we're kind of eagerly awaiting Facebook's reactions to this. Maybe they're going to wait until there's a pause to see how this is going to shake out. Is there any kind of info to be shared at this point, Michelle?
Yeah, I can maybe share like a broad stance.
Okay.
I and Adam Mosseri also made a comment on that on Twitter. I think it was yesterday or the day before. But at least at first, what it seems to be and what I'm saying is likely to evolve. But it looks like there was a bit of a stitching going on here. Taking old sources, and a lot of the things have evolved. There are still a lot of things that needs to be fixed in what was brought up. But I think the intention here is not necessarily to show the true picture. It's more to tell the story they want to tell, and now they're just kind of looking for element to add to that story. So the headline is fixed, and now all the data sources, and not all of them are still relevant. I don't know if that gives you a bit of a picture of what's going on.
Okay. Well, keep us updated with whatever you can, whenever you can. And it's much appreciated, of course.
Yeah, and also just I mean the it's from 2018, and the system has evolved since then. So not everything there is has a comprehensive and coherent timeline.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next biggest story at the moment from The Verge: Microsoft will now let users access accounts without a password by using Microsoft Authenticator, kind of like Google's been doing for a few years now, and a security key or a verification code. And the security key thing is becoming the hot thing. It's hardware. It's very difficult to hack, practically impossible. It's like having a physical key to your house. You now have a physical key to your devices. And unless somebody gets that physical key from you, they're not really going to be able to get into your devices. So if you use that as your way of authenticating. So I imagine due to all of the hacking and whatnot, that's why Google employees are all using physical keys now for the most part. And perhaps to minimize, it might become, get ready, because I'm expecting this is likely to become a very popular thing, just as physical keys are for our houses. So the next big one is from Bloomberg, that Discord says it has raised $500 million, led by Dragoneer, Fidelity, and others, sources say, at the $15 billion valuation. And Discord, if I recall correctly, was rumored they received an offer from Microsoft, if I recall correctly. Aaron might know, being that Aaron's at Fidelity. I'm trying to remember that headline. And it was also around the 15 billion, no, or 10, was it? It was a headline months ago.
I thought Discord got bought by Microsoft already. That
They
didn't
were,
go through.
it made an offer, and then it didn't go through, as I recall. But let's just do a very fast Google search for Discord Microsoft.
This is where so much information comes in so fast for us that we're having trouble holding on to it.
Yeah, it was 10 billion, and it was Microsoft. So my memory serves me well. It was May 25th. Discord CEO on Microsoft bid. We did receive a lot of offers. Microsoft reportedly made a $10 billion offered bid for Discord, and they didn't do it. So, but now the valuation at 15 billion, and a 500 million led by Dragoneer, Fidelity, and others. And Discord is kind of in the same space as Clubhouse to a degree. They do a lot of audio. It's most widely known and used as a way for video game streamers to talk with their teams and their people who watch the teams play in real time. And it's evolved into a lot other than that. It's kind of like an audio version of Slack in a way. Teams are using it to talk in groups. When Clubhouse came out, they did add a very Clubhousey like interface as well, for those who like the Clubhousey interface. And yeah, it's quite a little success story going on over there at Discord. And congrats to them on the fundraising. The next one from MIT Tech Review. They say they have sources that U.S. firm called Accuvant, now part of Optiv, sold iPhone hacking tool Karma to the UAE for $1.3 million in 2016. The tool has been used against hundreds of targets. An American cybersecurity firm was behind the 2016 iPhone hack sold to a group of mercenaries and used by the United Arab Emirates. And there was a story yesterday rather similar to this, that the Department of Justice is now going after 3 American intelligence folks aka FBI, former FBI agents potentially, or no, they said they were NSA to be specific. And that these former NSA gentlemen had built some hacking tools for the UAE. And now they're paying some rather hefty fines because that's against the law to do that. And now, and this I assume this is a totally separate thing, but interesting, 2 days in a row that U.S. firms now providing hacking tools to the UAE 2 days in a row. What
Yeah,
the?
and the real and Tyler, the real controversy about that, and the reason the U.S. government went after these guys is because those three NSA hackers hacked the U.S. Right? If it was some other country, I don't think they would have bothered so much, but because they went and hacked in the U.S. itself, so
Mm-hmm. So the next one from Bloomberg. ThoughtWorks shares close up 40% in its NASDAQ debut, valuing the company at $9 billion. I don't really have any thoughts on that. The next one from TechCrunch, a company called Apna, whose networking app lets blue-collar workers upskill and find jobs, raises $100 million, led by Tiger Global, becoming India's youngest unicorn. Jesus, they had another one yesterday and another one today. So already 2 this week. So yeah, another
27 this year.
at least we had 2 in the last 2 days. Yeah, so another Indian unicorn. Just absolute tremendous explosion of unicorns in India in 2021. At this rate, you might get to 40 by the end of the year. It's just unbelievable. 40 unicorns in a year for one country. It's just that I don't. That would be impressive for America at the peak of our unicorn generation in Silicon Valley. So it's like unbelievable. And this category of upskilling, this is called upskilling, of basically helping companies who have lots of team members who they need to help educate. And rather than send those team members to colleges, kind of the traditional route of upskilling, you could think, I mean, universities are in the business of upskilling, but upskilling, the term is, you're going to hear that word a lot in the next couple years. That's going to be a super hot category. There's going to be a whole bunch of unicorns in the upskilling game. And just like buy now, pay laters have a hard time failing and they all seem to become unicorns, upskilling is also going to be one of those categories where it's going to be kind of hard to lose because it's essentially a learning program customized for a big company with lots of money to spend to educate their team members to become more valuable team members. And you can imagine, you can show them the math. We can, help you upskill your team members so that they're worth a lot more, and we're only going to charge you 5% of that value that we're going to help create within the company. So there's incredibly low risk in that sales pitch. So there's going to be very big adoption. It's a win-win. And so not a surprise to see a new unicorn in upskilling. We will see many more. The next one's from CNBC that says Goldman Sachs is acquiring buy now, pay later fintech GreenSky for about $2.24 billion in an all-stock deal. Goldman Sachs acquiring fintech lender GreenSky as the investment banker pushes further into consumer finance. There you go, as advertised.
When are you starting Tyler Pay?
Exactly. Tech News Pay. You can.
And then, sorry, we have some friends down in the audience.
Okay, thanks.
Gareth.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, anyone else interested in launching a buy now, pay later? Does anyone have a part of the world where they are living where there isn't a buy now, pay later that we can create a quick $1 billion over, in short order?
Tyler,
Yes.
having all those, a lot of them yesterday, getting ready for the Technics Africa room, I actually saw one of the very first Africa's the collection startup, because those by now the pay later are coming, but there are also a little bit of default coming up as well. And I think governments are a little bit cracking down on an ethical way of trying to force people to pay back. So I was surprised Africa is having its own first debt collection as well. So there you go. Opportunities left and right.
So the next one is, one second here. Let's see the next one up. ThoughtWorks, we got Goldman Sachs. Adobe says it will launch a payment service via PayPal for Adobe Commerce by the end of the year, adding native payments to customers' digital storefronts. So they want to get into a little bit of the Shopify game. Yeah, and I can imagine that PayPal would love to get into the Shopify game, because they kind of started out in that, enabling finance for people selling on eBay, for example. Adobe Commerce, adding native payments to customers' digital storefronts. So I imagine what's going on here is Adobe Commerce. I imagine Adobe's going to make it easier for people to make little commerce stores, because, as we've said countless times here in Tech News Around the World, there's going to be a mad rush for everybody to make little mom and pop shops. Every single shop on the planet needs to become e-commerceified. And boy, does every restaurant know it. Restaurants already understand you either become part of an app, which is their version of e-commerce, and for delivery, or you die during COVID. You had two choices as a restaurant. You either shut down, or you partner with, fortunate for them, they had these apps they could partner with. As a flower store, you can't really partner, and you need to make your own little, digital experience, like a Shopify store, and become part of a bigger network somehow. And so I imagine Adobe and others are going to realize, oh, Jesus, just like there was a huge market to make websites for people in the 80s and making apps for people in the 2000s, now we need to make little storefronts for every single billions of small stores. And so far, Shopify is just dominating in that space because they've made it super easy. And I think Adobe correctly realizes the tremendous opportunity. I'm really just guessing here, but then Adobe isn't, there's the finance part as well. And so PayPal can be their partner in the finance part of that. So Adobe saying it will launch a payment service via PayPal for Adobe Commerce by the end of the year, adding native payments for customers' digital storefronts. I'm just guessing, but that's what I would be doing if I was Adobe and PayPal. So maybe I'm projecting.
Just just to add one startup that started in Nigeria. It is called Our Pass. They are actually integrating and facilitating all e-commerce startups and businesses, so that it becomes like one-click checkout for all of them. And they secured actually 1 million pre-seed funding in order to go all over Africa. So yeah, there you go. There are a lot of interested parties even in that small startup. Everybody want to be in e-commerce, and everybody want to have one-click checkout and just make it easy for everyone to buy.
Yep. So the next one is from The Verge. Senator Markey and Representatives Castor and Trahan wrote to Facebook calling on it to abandon its plans to launch an Instagram app for kids in light of Wall Street Journal's reports. Oh boy. So these Wall Street Journal reports the last 4 days are already having a toll. And here's the headline. Top lawmakers on the Senate Commerce Committee's panel over consumer protection said they were launching a probe into Facebook after the Wall Street Journal reported Tuesday that the company was aware of the harm Instagram can cause on teenage girls. Senators Richard Blumenthal and Marsha Blackburn announced their investigation into Facebook in a statement released Tuesday. The senators said that they were in touch with a Facebook whistleblower, and would seek new documents and witness testimony from the company related to the reporting. Here's the quote. It is clear that Facebook is incapable of holding itself accountable. The Wall Street Journal's reporting reveals Facebook's leadership to be focused on growth at all costs mindset that values profits over the health and lives of children and teens, the lawmakers said. When given the opportunity to come clean to us about their knowledge of Instagram's impact on young users, Facebook provided evasive answers that were misleading and covered up clear evidence of significant harm. House lawmakers also criticized Facebook over the Journal's new reporting, and Republicans even issued a new amendment to the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation seeking to address tech's effects on teens. Representative from Florida introduced the measure that would direct the Federal Trade Commission to go after unfair and deceptive acts or practices targeting our children's mental health and privacy by social media. The amendment failed. Representative Ken Buck, top Republican at the House Judiciary Committee Antitrust Subcommittee, said in a tweet, Big Tech has become the new big tobacco. Facebook is lying about how their product harms teens. A group of Democrats, including Senator Ed Markey and Kathy Castor and Lauren Trahan, penned a letter to Facebook Wednesday calling the company to abandon its plans to launch an Instagram app for kids. In light of the report, here's the quote, children and teens are uniquely vulnerable populations online, and these findings paint a clear and devastating picture of Instagram as an app that poses significant threats to young people's well-being, the lawmakers wrote. Facebook did not immediately respond to a request for the comment. 43, Cheryl. So there.
Got it. 43. Got it.
Got it. Noted. So there's that. Okay. And there's a tweet from the head of Instagram, Mosseri, Mr. Mosseri says on Twitter, the Wall Street Journal story today on research we're doing to understand young people's experience on Instagram casts our findings in a negative light, but speaks to important issues. We stand by this work and believe more companies should be doing the same. And the next one is from ABC News. And this is a doozy. And somebody sent me a video of this as well, which is one of the tweets that we will get into after we only have a bit more of these popular headlines to go through. But this was one of the ones that somebody in the audience found as well. According to ABC News and others, Washington Post, and the UN agency itself, the headline reads, it's not totally accurate, but we'll get into that. The UN rights chief calls for a moratorium on the sale and use of AI tech that threatens human rights, including facial recognition, until safeguards are put in place. Actually, that's a much better worded headline. Others are just saying UN urges moratorium on AI, which is a little overstating the case. They're not trying to kill AI. They had an official statement that they read, and when you listen to their official statement, and mind you, this is not the UN. This is an agency within the UN, of which they have dozens, if not more than 100. So somebody can look that up. The UN has all kinds of agencies, many of which you've never heard of. And this one is UNHR, United Nations Human Rights. I honestly wasn't familiar with UNHR, and I'm quite familiar with a lot of UN agencies. But United Nations Human Rights Chief on Wednesday called for the moratorium on the sale and use of AI technology that pose human rights risks, including including the state use of facial recognition software until adequate safeguards are put in place. The plea comes as AI develops at a rapid clip despite myriad concerns ranging from privacy to racial bias plaguing the emerging technology. Here's the quote. Artificial intelligence can be a force for good, helping societies overcome some of the great challenges of our times, but AI technologies can have negative, even catastrophic effects if they are used without sufficient regard to how they affect people's human rights. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet said in a statement Wednesday. Bachelet's warnings accompany a report released by the UN Human Rights Office analyzing how AI systems affect people's right to privacy, as well as rights to health, education, freedom, movement, and more. And a second quote, artificial intelligence now reaches into almost every corner of our physical and mental lives and even emotional states. Bachelet adds, AI systems are used to determine who gets public services, decide who has a chance to be recruited for a job, and of course, they affect what information people see and can share online. And given the rapid and continuous growth of AI, filing the immense accountability gap in how data is collected, stored, shared, and used is one of the most urgent human rights questions we face. We cannot afford to continue playing catch up regarding AI, allowing its use with limited or no boundaries or oversight, and dealing with the almost inevitable human rights consequences after the fact. Bachelet said, calling for immediate action to put human rights guardrails on the use of AI. This report echoes, and then there's another quote from someone named Greer. Evan Greer, the director of nonprofit advocacy group Fight for the Future, told ABC News that the report further proves the existential threat posed by this emerging technology. This report echoes the growing consensus among technology and human rights experts around the world. Artificial intelligence powered surveillance systems like facial recognition pose an existential threat to the future of human liberty, Greer told ABC News. Like nuclear or biological weapons, technology like this has such an enormous potential for harm that it cannot be effectively regulated. It must be banned. Facial recognition and other discriminatory use of AI can do immense harm when they're deployed by governments or private entities like corporations. Greer added, we agree with the UN report's conclusion there should be an immediate worldwide moratorium on the sale of facial recognition surveillance technology and other harmful AI systems. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I posted that, and I think it really ties into the conversation that we had yesterday and others, in terms of how we're able to manage and monitor, you know, AI and its application, and to use it as a force for good, and not to go down this dangerous pathway that would limit people's rights and their freedoms, or even worse, kind of subjugate them
I'll
to
be back in 3 minutes. Go ahead.
subjugate them to particular categories or profiling, or so I mean, I think it's interesting that she came out and said that she wants to place a moratorium on the use of AI. I don't know how that would be done or implemented, but I do think that it's important that the UN takes a strong stance at this stage, knowing that the technology is already out of the gate, but its applications and regulations, I think, are still in the process of being kind of figured out. So I mean, those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, Lakeisha, I was actually involved in this process. Sorry, I'm in a space that's a little echoey, so I hope it's clear. But I was part of all the consultations that developed this report that Bachelet is speaking to. And it's part of an ongoing process at the UN Human Rights Office, which is the secretariat for all of the human rights treaties that different countries have ratified. And so she can't actually impose a moratorium, but what she can do is call on UN member states, which is 190 countries, to take action to ensure that they're regulating AI appropriately. So this is probably just one step in a longer process, which could develop into having special experts appointed to look into this further, launching further investigations. But there's no inherent enforcement power, so it's really still up to governments to take action on this.
Yeah, I don't know how you would enforce it, but I can think of a few really cool applications for facial recognition. But I can also think of about 1,000 times more Orwellian ones, just from suppressing a society or advertising. It all goes off the rails. Like, that is one of those truly transformative, uber powerful techniques. I mean, it's the same thing that really Elon Musk is driving all the cars around with. It's able to recognize the environment. When you start recognizing people, it can get really weird.
That's pretty much like a Pandora box. Just imagine the scenario like, there's a crime committed, and pretty much like 25 people has been sort of like witnessed it, but some of the people don't want to actually come forward as a witness. And here comes the face recognition, and you receive a letter, that if you have actually been speeding or jumped the light at home, that you received a letter that you've been identified as the witness for that crime. Can you come and testify? So it's what would be the legal implications of it? So it's just a Pandora box by itself, like how the legal, um, from the justice point of view, that whether it's going to be taken care of from that point onwards. Would it be considered as something that you can actually ask people to sort of like come as a witness? And many other scenarios, by the way.
Where is
I
Charles
mean, we're
William
seeing it in
Kim?
some countries.
Meg, I was going to ask you, what kind of feedback have you and your colleagues received? Yeah, I don't know if it's just not been long enough, since the statement has been made public, but have you received any feedback, any, strong from either camp, if you will, in terms of how it's being received? This strong suggestion that AI needs to be better managed and policed.
Yeah, I mean, certainly not a novel suggestion. We've been talking about it earlier today in regards to Facebook and teenage girls, right? So the challenge, I think, is that there's not really a powerful mechanism in place for doing this globally. Maybe there shouldn't be, maybe it really is better to leave it up to governments, but you have some governments that are very much using their technological capacity to maintain a hold on power for a tiny group. And, of course, China is one example, but there's many others as well. So the real question is, what kind of public, mobilization will there be to start to demand a change in policy and change in governance of these mechanisms? The UN Human Rights Office doesn't have the capacity to do it. They're one of the worst funded UN agencies. As Tyler pointed out, there are many, and they have one of the least, budgets relative to their mandate. I think they have one guy actually who's responsible for human rights and AI. So it took them like 3 years to put out this report.
It's really interesting. So full disclosure, I'm meeting with a young woman. Whenever I say young woman, I'm reminded of my stage in my own life, but she's working with UN Women and doing some really exciting work. And so I have my headset in and we're on Zoom. And, I heard this conversation come up because, she's at a point in her career, like, how can I, advance the rights of women and of youth and of, different marginalized populations. And one of the areas that we started to discuss just as this topic began was the intersection of technology and the implications that will have either for the development of towards certain types of goals within certain populations, or the whether technology would be used as a force to kind of impede that and to create more barriers. And I think that to your point, I mean, it's not a new topic, but I think that there's still so much work that needs to be done at this intersection between human rights and technology. And it just feels like we're so not far behind, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done just to even scope it out.
It's actually a shame because sorry, Meg. It's actually a shame because the without the ethical use of technology norms by the technology companies themselves, um, the whole industry is forcing the hand of the government to step in and regulate as more and more of this stuff is getting out there, right? So we know that everything has, there's two sides of every coin. I mean, every innovation has a dark side as well. Some of them get managed, and we never see the light of the dark side, if that makes sense. But when it comes to some of this stuff like facial recognition, Instagram, I mean, whatever, right? The addiction of gaming or just the algorithms and everything that's being done, there's very little, I won't say the word no, there's very little self regulation by the tech companies. And therefore, you're going to force the hand of government and regulators to step in. It's a shame, though. China's
I
doing it
totally
in
But
a
agree. Yeah.
very heavy-handed approach.
It's, I
Vinay,
mean, we'd have like something like 100 different sets of ethical principles that have been put out by like UN agencies, professional associations, civil society. So, the proliferation of like hundreds of these ethical guidelines doesn't really seem to change the underlying business models. And so I think, unfortunately, it is going to come down to regulation.
but
One,
also just uh,
sorry if I could
sorry,
jump in.
Craig. Craig, go ahead. You go ahead, and then I'll come in.
Thank you. One part, I agree that government needs to step in, but one possible solution to complement that is AI itself. So there's a startup that raised 25 million called Reliance AI. It was on TechCrunch today, and yeah, they've created a set of algorithms that are designed to monitor companies' data streams and basically come back to their privacy groups and see if something is yeah out of alignment or meeting the local government requirements.
So on the AI front, I think just the definition of like what's ethical and what's not, like at the time of the development, is just simply not possible. I mean, just imagine that like once the drones were coming about, you're selling a drone, you're developing a drone which has the camera, and then you can fly it with X amount of, with a range of X amount of kilometers or miles. How would you implement that? There's some sort of like a mechanism through which the people cannot actually use it for like sneaking into other people's property and then monitoring it, and that goes into all the privacy issues altogether. So I mean these kind of things, like when technology evolves, and similar thing happened like with the Facebook and all that, those privacy issues, much later on, sort of like we had to deal with. And then obviously all those hearings we heard. But when the Facebook was actually developing those things, that doesn't come to mind that that could be something which is, would have the legal implications. So when the technology is getting developed, it's just simply not there. And the people who are actually developing it, they are not looking from the perspective that how it's going to be used. In Facebook scenario, for instance, like when the people actually got on it, and there was a sizable number, only then we were able to, got in the position where, that became a matter of something big which needed to be regulated. Similar thing happened with the drones. Like, I mean, government had to step in at a certain point in time that if it's going to have certain range with those drones, then, we have to start issuing licenses for that. So it's similar sort of scenario, especially with the AI is a lot more complex because you never know. I mean, there's if somebody's working on a machine which is becomes like, in 10 years, 5 years time, which is going to be the basis for it, which evolve into something which becomes conscious. Here you go. This like a new breed of technology is going to be built on it. And at this point in time, to actually decide on the development front that whether it would be ethical to go in that direction or not is just nearly impossible.
No, so Kuram, I agree with you on that perspective that it's still evolving. What I would say is, are the tech companies demonstrating intent and demonstrating good faith in having these conversations publicly and disclosing, hey, here's a potential dark side of it, guys. We want to put a disclaimer here. We want you to, they just don't, right? Even the Electronic Frontier Foundation protects any kind of regulation or against companies. They're upset against geofences, etc. But what about the end consumer? What about the other side? So I don't think big tech is talking about this openly enough. And if at least if you're talking about it, showing good faith, then the regulators will work with you. But they almost take an antagonistic approach. That's the way I feel.
Okay, I'm back. What did I miss?
We just
We were
continued
discussing the
about
Heidi.
That I'm. Is it? Is
discussing
it?
the
Is it?
AI side.
Is
We just did a
A
unicorn in this
ton.
room.
we just
We
made a?
just did a
Did
big
we make a buy
unicorn in
now
this
pay
room.
later unicorn already? Uh,
Yes.
okay, good. Is it an appropriate
People
time to go into
don't.
the next article, or is there another?
Sure.
Yeah.
You can move on, yeah.
Okay, so the next one is from Cointel. I just had to run real fast, so forgive me. Africa's crypto market grew by 1,200% in value. And the next one from Politico. Joe Biden announces a new Indo-Pacific security partnership with Australia and the UK to share tech in areas like AI, cybersecurity, and quantum technologies. And China's already has a negative comment about it. And they said it's
Yeah, we had the
specifically to combat China. Yeah, Garam?
Yeah, we had the whole room on it. Like we talked about like for almost 3 hours on this particular thing because the whole geopolitical situation is changing so fast. It's incredible, and in fact, like the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty actually came about that, how it's going to be dealt with because some of the actual elements in that pact is sort of like going into the, that hot topics where, you know it could be because it's going to be nuclear submarine is going to be involved in that. So it's not just simply technology
Yeah.
on a
Yeah,
conventional
Kerm, but
basis. Yeah.
President Biden made it very clear that they're not giving nuclear technology. It's a nuclear submarine using non-nuclear uh, warheads and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
I watched that live interview with, not interview, speech from the two prime ministers and the president, and it was clear that it was not going to be that. But still, it raises a question of two worlds being created now.
I mean, they're referring to the power plants, right? That they're nuclear power plant subs, not diesel subs, I believe.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And then
And
Tyler,
Britain
I'm
and
sorry,
America have been using it
Ken's down there
for a
too.
long
Sorry.
time.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Ken, where are you at? Okay. Next up, we ready for the next one?
Sure.
Sure. Here we go. Next one from Bloomberg. FTC says that Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Microsoft made 819 unreported acquisition deals of more than $1 million, including for patents and acquihires from 2010 to 2019. So for the decade of 2010 to 2020, basically, they did 819 unreported acquisition deals of at least $1 million. That's quite a lot. Actually, that's about what I would have guessed. We should have done that as a Tech News Jeopardy, actually, including for patents and acquihires. Reports show hundreds of deals by tech giants were unchecked. Antitrust enforcers must close loopholes, FTC Chair Lena Khan says. Next up, from Reuters, WhatsApp launches its first test of a public directory for businesses within the app, starting in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Facebook's messaging service, WhatsApp, on Wednesday launched a new feature to make it possible to search for businesses within its app for the first time, the company told Reuters. And this is right in my wheelhouse. My startup was exactly related to precisely this. So it's interesting. The question is, will people message businesses via WhatsApp? In Thailand, we're definitely doing that now. I believe it will work very well. And yeah, the question is, they're going to need to make the back end, meaning the part that the business sees, a little dashboard so that, they've got, if you ping the gym, on in Manhattan, who should that go to? And maybe it should go to 10 different people, and maybe they want a dashboard and analytics, and companies, if WhatsApp is going to want companies to use this, they're going to have to get all of these endless requests of features from companies. I want to be able to unread the message and forward it to the boss and send it to his phone and do this. And I mean, there's literally hundreds of features that they will ask for, especially in terms of,
By the way,
yeah.
Tyler, yeah, I see more and more integration. Like, the direction of the WhatsApp is going to be more kind of like linking it, and the business side I'm talking about, not the personal side, but the business WhatsApp is going to be more linked towards the actual pages of the Facebook. And now with the feature that now it's not just about actually you opening up a copy of the WhatsApp on your computer, but there are 5 copies you can actually open, and you don't need the phone to be there. And that is now, all the messages are in the cloud, and now you have the separate copy on each machine if you want to actually open it 5 times. So that feature is being introduced like about, I think, a month and a half ago. So now what you are referring to is going to be ultimately possible that, people of 5 team can actually sort of like see the same thing at the same time, and they don't need a phone to be in, with a QR code and all that. So, and they can increase it. I mean, it doesn't have to be the 5 copies. It could be like 20 copies.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Next one up is from, here we go. Axios says Rebellion Defense. Eric Schmidt used to be the CEO of Google, and I believe is he still chairman of Google? He was kind of when he stepped down, and gave the CEO seat back to the founders. But Eric Schmidt backed. Yeah, hold on one second. Hold on.
This is some expensive dead air.
In case you just joined the room, please hold on for a while.
Yes,
Tyler is back.
Rebellion Defense. The Eric Schmidt backed developer of AI defense tech raises $150 million, led by Insight and Venrock, at a $1 billion pre-money valuation. Rebellion Defense, a developer of AI solutions for U.S. defense, tells Axios that it has raised $150 million in venture capital at a $1 billion pre-money valuation. And so the question is, to the UN human rights, does Eric Schmidt's AI defense of our borders, is that violating human rights? Or is that infringing on the enjoyment of human rights, as they phrased it in their press event earlier today? This is where it's going to, that whole issue, and I wasn't part of that debate or conversation, but my goodness, how do you police that? How do you police AI like that? People who do AI will tell you it's not possible. So I understand governments think that it's possible. I'm trying to think of an equivalent of the geeks to ask the governments. It's like, hey, governments, we are going to demand that you do all court cases in less than 1 hour going forward. That all Supreme Court cases should be less than 24 hours. How's that a fair? How's that sound? Okay, we'll meet you halfway. We'll start. We'll do. I mean, that's the impossibility of the ask of like, trying to police and regulate AI based on ethics, which is what they're arguing. And it's too. There's a lot of people at AI departments having head-shaking laughter mania today over that headline.
This is what I
That's
find
what we were
quite.
discussing, Tyler, when you were away. This is exactly what we were discussing.
So
What I find quirky about that is
but
that
I'm
this
trying
assumption
to
that
sorry to interrupt you, Carl. I'll hand
that's
it to you
okay.
next. But I just want, how do we let the politicians know how kind of um, beyond the moon,
Asinine.
how beyond the moon it is? I think we have to put it in their terms they understand, which is, okay, great. You're a politician. Okay, great.
Let's balance the budget.
by tomorrow. Yeah, we'll fix AI and you balance the budget tomorrow. Simple as that. Easy peasy. Great. Let's do it. Mission accomplished. Oh, and while you're at it, get all the CO2 out of the atmosphere. Done. Great.
That's kind of this point I was going to make that Chris just made, is that this assumption, which is how do we explain, one, how incapable it would be to shut down an AI sort of running a platform temporarily, or even to control it or to hold progress because of just the speed at which it grows, but also how would you, like, the conversation you're saying, talk to them at the points that talk to them in the way that they would understand. Well, it's this assumption that we're talking about it from a point of ethics. And maybe I'm cynical, but I don't think a lot of world governments are particularly interested in ethics. They're interested in efficacy. So then what you say is, well, the problem isn't that an AI that Google is employing or Facebook's employing or any of these identity services are employing are unethical. It's that they're so efficient that it's taking the power out of the government hands, and the government's kind of looking at it and go, well, I kind of want a piece of that. Like, nuclear weapons are the most unethical thing that we've ever developed ever, and it's a terrible idea for us to have them, but they're so goddamn efficient that every major world power has, at least a couple lying around in a warehouse somewhere. So it's
But
like,
by the way,
this is what I'm confused about this UN thing, which is initially I thought, oh, that's clever, because if you tie it to human rights is quite a it is something that world governments care about, from either internally, but also from a point of perspective from their citizens want to know you're not infringing on my human rights. But then Meg actually educated us about the fact that it's just so underfunded and inadequate. So what is this? Is this just like a distraction? Hey, we care about human rights. While actually what we want is we want a piece of this pie. We don't want to stop AI. We just want some of our own. We want control of it.
So one other point here is that arm of the UN Human Rights, their ballpark is obviously human rights. The hint's in the name. But there is a considerable human right issue happening on planet Earth at the moment that a lot of countries, big countries, have used the name genocide on officially, government official statements of genocide. And the UN Human Rights Group isn't really doing anything about that. There's many countries are claiming there's an actual genocide happening on planet Earth at this moment. And the UN Human Rights Agency is turning their head away on that. That would seem to be perhaps deserving of their attention and focus. And I imagine that the AI that's being used, I think they understand that AI is being used as part of that, and they want to limit that. I can understand that, and I can appreciate that and empathize with their perspective on that. But I forget where I was going to go with this rant. I saw Meg wanted to jump in. Hold on, Karam. Meg?
Sorry. In defense of my colleagues down the street here at the High Commissioner for Human Rights, this is a tiny little agency that, as I was saying, I think while you were away, Tyler, they're completely underfunded. What they do actually is they can't enforce any human rights because it's not their job. What they do is they're a secretariat for all of the human rights treaties that countries have signed, and then countries hold each other accountable.
Got it.
And I think, I absolutely share your concern about the genocide, and they have issued some statements. I agree they could go farther. But the problem is really that no country wants to stand up and really, take action. Right. So I think that's the problem.
Yep. Thank you for that, Meg.
But maybe another discussion.
No. That's your inputs are brilliant, so I appreciate it. And then Karam, sorry, one second, I interrupted Karam. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, but to be fair, I think it should be welcome. At least the conversation is start to happen. In 20 years' time, 30 years' time, we're gonna be, we're gonna be have this issue at hand. So has to be some sort of conversation to start to happen, and it would evolve into something which is going to be more practical. So that's just my opinion, I think.
Yeah.
Tyler, may I add something?
Willie,
Ben, you've got a hot mic.
Okay,
Ben.
I'll get Ben, and then Willie, we have to put the 24-second shot clock on you, my friend. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Ben.
Ben is driving.
Oh, it's Willie.
No, it was. Now it's
okay.
Me.
Go ahead.
That must have been a bug, Tyler.
No
Sorry.
problem.
That wasn't me doing anything.
Go ahead, Willie.
Now it's. I want to say the policing is impossible on many levels, not only on one level. Think about the speed of development in AI generally. Then think about the speed of development in a project. Then think about the butterfly effect. If you just change a line of code, it might become very toxic. What this AI can proceed in a certain context, and without that line of code, it would be rather harmless. And the same, the complexity of explaining it, and the billions which are at stake typically. So it's really impossible on many levels. But I totally understand the wish to do it, because in the same time, it's like. Let's say the non-proliferation treaty on nuclear stuff, but it's much more complicated. And indeed, we need a debate about it, like we had on killer drones. So That was
Okay.
my 2 cents.
So Bloomberg has a hot new headline here that says Brooklyn-based Genius, a music annotating startup that provides context for rap lyrics, has sold its assets for $80 million, less than the total funding it raised. And that was an interesting startup journey, that one. My goodness. And an interesting founder. The buyer is MediaLab.ai Inc. They were from my little hometown of Santa Monica, California. Oh no, they sold its assets to Santa Monica, California-based media holding company for $80 million, and which is Media Lab. And Genius originally started out doing the lyrics, and it turns out the whole lyric space is a really wild copyright space online. So it became a very strange business for all those lyric companies. It says the sale rep.
Perfect one for you, Tyler, with your music background and
You know what's
geekiness. Like
funny?
you must be like loving this
Well,
one.
yeah, I'll tell you a funny story that has never really been told. So, doing a startup out of Santa Monica back in 2007, 8, 9, 10, Google themselves came. We had a meeting, and we were talking about what to do, and and Google even suggested why not get into the lyrics, because lyrics are huge. We have an incredible amount of search for lyrics at Google. Why don't you become the database of all the lyrics? And boy, was that a trap. That would have been a really terrible move, it turns out, legally. And there's companies who did go into that. And for a short time, it was incredibly lucrative. And Genius was quite hot at the moment. And I believe Mark Andreessen himself invested in Genius. And it was assumed it was going to be a hot thing and all that. And it got wrapped up in the music industry's python of boa constrictor.
So literally the pythons wouldn't let them do fair use of the lyrics.
This article,
Yeah, Genius doesn't create anything, do they?
right? Well,
Like,
that
I've been looking at this for 3 years now.
well, this was the issue: is Google takes this approach all the time. Google's approach, and they debate this constantly with websites, which is data isn't copyrightable. So if your website has data, we're going to take that data out and we're going to provide it to you. Google has this interesting paradox, which is when somebody's searching on Google and we know the answer, can we not just show it to them as fast as we want? Because that's what we want. We want them to have a great user experience. Why send them a page of 5 blue links and make them search in those blue links for the answer when we know the answer algorithmically? Here's your question. Oh, that answer is a piece of data on this website. Take out what they call a snippet, provide that snippet. And so, for example, how old is Britney Spears? It will now tell you how old Britney Spears is. But that they got that information from a website. Should they have sent you to that website that had that data? Because somebody had to go through the trouble of asking her and getting that information and hosting it on their website. And Google just took that answer and put it above their blue links. So now you don't have to go to their website. But it's data. Nobody can own the fact that Britney's, 26 years old or whatever. How tall's Tom Cruise? How much does, Shaquille O'Neal make? There's countless datas. Now, what about song lyrics? Who owns that? Then it gets even much more tricky. But you see the paradox between publishers and Google in this battle that they have and why Rupert Murdoch and Fox Media hate the Googles and the Facebooks, because they get the viewage, they run the ads, and they don't send the people to the source of the news who did the actual journalism.
Unfortunately, the people that lose at the end of the day in these kind of battles are the artists and the actual creators and the
Oh
people,
yeah,
because they get so caught up in the red tape that what's happening is that a lot of their music or their lyrics and what that could have been heard or seen around the world no longer does, and then they have to excuse me, then they have to depend on the big companies again to get their music out there. So it's a very difficult thing, and often it's the artists that are actually really suffering in the end.
So that's just an interesting topic on that one. The next one is
Tyler,
yes.
can I ask
Yes.
you something? Can you guys come up with some kind of
inscription form of news so that Google won't be able to do something like that, and only on when you're on that website that you get to see the real data. Is that possible? Using
Paywalls
AI or
is
something?
usually is what people do as well.
Yeah, I mean you can do stuff on a website to it's like called a robot.txt where you don't allow sites to crawl it, but then you don't get the traffic, right? And
Even then, that's like a polite request not to. It's the same as the new
agreed,
controls
yeah.
that you've got on Apple where you say, don't track me across apps. It's a polite request not to. You don't have to listen to it.
Okay. Next one is a company from Reuters. It says Melio, a B2B payment startup for small businesses, raises $250 million. And French startup Skello, which develops SaaS software as a service tool that lets companies manage their work schedules, raises 40 million euros from Partech, which is Boris and the team over there in Paris. And then Bloomberg says that Oppo, which is one of the biggest mobile phone companies, especially in Asia, and it's considered kind of a budget smartphone. They make very cheap but big smartphones, is cutting around 20% of its staff in key software and device teams after it merged operations with OnePlus, which they merged with about a month ago. I remember reading that headline. DoorDash files another lawsuit against New York City, saying the new laws requiring it to share customer data with restaurants constitutes an invasion of their privacy. Oh boy, that's interesting.
That's a great one, isn't
It
it?
is.
Like the juicy data is being harnessed and taken over.
That's super interesting. DoorDash files because DoorDash wants to own the customer. The customer orders from DoorDash, and DoorDash keeps all of that information about the customer. DoorDash picks up the food, gives it to the customer, end of story. And the restaurants are like, we want to know who that customer is so that next time they can order from us. And DoorDash is like, yeah, no, that ain't how this works. That's our customer. And it's our platform. You agreed to join our platform. Nobody forced you onto our platform. If you don't like our platform, go find another platform. That's the rules. It's our customer.
Isn't that a bit aggressive though?
Sure, yeah, but isn't being told you have to join the military and go die for your country a little aggressive? Yeah, it's a little aggressive. So
it's not just ownership. It would also be like a bit of a nightmare for DoorDash because then they are passing on. When you sign up, you say, "Hey DoorDash, you're keeping all of my data, and with one click, with one button, I can clear any data that you store about me." They can't do that if they're passing it on to third parties every time you order.
Yeah, but DoorDash, it would not. It would be even worse. It would be DoorDash would cease to exist. It's like I'm trying to think of another example of if you're letting the consumers and the restaurants go directly, they will, and then there's no need for DoorDash.
I suppose if you're a restaurant that has not every restaurant that uses DoorDash, and I would probably say most, don't have their own capable app with a nice UI that's very quick to order. They don't have integrated Apple Pay. They probably might not even necessarily have delivery services. But yeah.
The key of the debate is when you want food, are you at that moment and you open your phone and when you decide I want food, and you obviously have choices to walk outside. Believe it or not, people used to do this. They used to open the front door of their goddamn.
No way.
They used to.
They did it themselves.
I swear to God, they used to put on their shoes and open the front door and walk out of their apartment and go in search of food. And this has been going on almost back to back into the Paleolithic era, where people would go look for animals.
Sounds like a hunter.
Yeah, like a hunter-gatherer kind of thing. And turns out it's only in the past, I don't know, 18 months of human history that this has kind of changed, where now people put their hand in their pocket and they pull out a phone. And I make this long-winded joke to say, at that moment, that's the key moment. Because once you put your hand in your pocket, you're not really a customer of the restaurant, you're a customer of the app. If you put your shoes on, you're obviously a customer of the restaurant. But by putting your hand in your pocket, and you have many apps to open, and you could open Google and search for the name of that restaurant for their phone number and call them directly. It's crazy. There's this thing called a telephone, and the restaurant will actually answer it, and they'll say, Gino's Pizza. And you say, hey, Gino's, can I order a pizza? But you didn't do that. You press this red little app called DoorDash. And at that moment, when you click the DoorDash button, whose customer are you? Are you Gino's Pizza's customer, or are you DoorDash's customer? That's the heart of the debate.
Jokes aside, does anybody know if DoorDash has anything in their policies that prohibits you from making active attempts to claim the customer back? As in, like, if you're a pizza place, can you add a QR code on your pizza box so when they scan it, it then downloads the app along with a 20-30% sort of
Right.
discount for your next
Yeah,
order, your
isn't
next
that
exit?
what they're
I
doing?
have no
Like,
time to check, Carl, but I would assume, of course, because
like,
otherwise there's no business case for DoorDash to exist.
yeah, I'm pretty sure there's like third party that create like is helping businesses keep their data, but I forgot what the name of that third party is. But the reality is, this is like if I just see DoorDash ending bad with this kind of practice. To be honest, like there's
The,
a lot of good faith that's happening with a lot of people, and yeah, there's no real business case for this. So yeah.
It
this is
happens
gonna
that McDonald's actually gets your information, by the way, through certain third parties. So I used to work on food, so I'm aware there are third parties like McDonald's or Starbucks that want your information. So it does happen, but we give the customer the opportunity to say either they opt in or they opt out. So it does happen. It happens in China as well.
I think this is gonna accelerate the promulgation of the ghost kitchens, because what'll happen is the customer is gonna show up and Gino's Pizza just won't be there. There'll be the ghost kitchen version of a pizza place. So I think the problem is the restaurateurs are kind of stuck here. They need the business.
Well, it's always the way that it's going to happen because you start off by facilitating and then you become the gatekeeper. And the moment you become the gatekeeper, the people you were facilitating don't really like
Yeah,
that and they're going to rise up.
exactly.
So,
Yeah. Like, and it's a very old way of doing business, like, as in old people way of doing business as well. Like, they, yeah, new people don't really like that, to be fair. And
well,
if, the
it's
cost,
it's it's
yeah,
very close to how we have the issue in the UK of supermarkets with providers, with produce providers. As in, it used to be the case that you would go directly to a farmer's market or to a farmer, for instance, and you would you'd buy your produce like that. And
yeah,
then Tesco's are like, hey, we can keep your stuff, we can deliver it, we can put it on a nice shelf, and we will facilitate it. And then it's got to the point where Tesco's will go over here. Who's the major sort of major supermarket in the UK? They'll just say, our quarterly is down. We need to boost profits, so we're going to cut 20% of the revenue that was going through to the farmers, and we're going to make it cheaper. But that isn't going to. We're going to drop the price of milk by 20 pence a bottle. That's not going to come out of our pockets. That's going to come
Minutes.
out of your pockets. Hey, don't look at us. It's your job to figure out how to sort that. And this is very similar to that, where it's facilitating and then leads to gatekeeping.
I
I'm
don't know
actually
why there is
thinking.
so much issue. If you look at any other model,
Hold
like
on,
for instance,
Karam. I
Booking.com.
have to jump out for 5 minutes.
So,
Go ahead.
so
Karam, go ahead.
just okay. So for Booking.com, like I mean, pretty much the same. I mean, if you look at it in any other scenario, you're booking a rent a car, you're booking a hotel room, you're going through Booking.com, or you're going through Orbis or Expedia and all that. Expedia is getting all your information and it's been passed on to, rent a car and to hotels and all that. So why this issue is coming up in terms of the actual food. That's pretty
I just
much,
think because food doesn't have the KYC element. You're renting a hotel room, you're renting a car. There's no KYC in food necessarily
No.
until you get into alcoholic beverages.
So sorry, Chris. The other reason, and Kuram, is because all of these companies, they were deeply discounting from what the rate they were paying to the restaurant to the consumer in order to acquire the customer. Now that deep discounts have dropped, and the price differential that I can get from the restaurant to these food delivery companies isn't that much, isn't that significant anymore. And there, because they had a burn rate, right? Now they're trying to make money, they're trying to do that. So with that, uh, with the discounting stuff that's happening or not happening anymore, what's in it for the restaurants anymore? I mean, they're not bringing any more. They can create their own delivery system, etc., and probably offer discounts directly to the consumer. Why do they need to give that to the food delivery apps or
Yeah,
the
to
Okay,
to
so
your
I
commissioner?
have
point,
actually
Vinay, I just want to add that,
sure.
Vinay, yeah, good point. It's just the thing is, it does impact the small merchants, right? And that's the shitty part about food apps in general. It's more of the small mom and pop shops get impacted more. But like, let's say if it's a large brand like Starbucks and McDonald's, like I'm aware of this because I worked on something like it in China. You can sign up on Starbucks through WeChat, but you're still having access to your Starbucks reward points, right? And this is something that we they want to encourage their customers still to retain them, right? Most importantly, but also use those points and get rewards if you're still purchasing through Starbucks using your membership. So they let you do that in China. I know that's a completely different way of retaining customers, but it's a smart way of actually retaining customers. But only large merchants, right, can only do that if you have that type of system in place. So that's the shitty part about retaining customers with merchants.
So we have gone through. I have an IT company, so we actually not don't do it normally for like smaller businesses. We do for like ERP solutions for bigger businesses. But that was a friend, so he approached out. He has got the restaurant in Buffalo, and we started to actually sort of looking into the whole equation because that was the issue he had because they were paying about roughly anywhere between 25 to 35%, depending on the actual number of orders and everything. So it's not just the DoorDash and Uber Eats and all that. So five tablets are sitting next to his, the cash register, which is Clover. So Clover actually provides all the payment solution, and it's got the cash register, and that is getting connected with all these services. So he said, like, how can I actually save money? So we said, okay, fine, let us develop something for it because pretty much the Clover actually provides the back end where the whole ordering system is being taken care of. The only difference is that you have to be on the screen to actually touch that. Okay, item A, B, C, D, whatever, and then you just build up something behind it, which is going to be online. So it already provides that online ordering system. Now, what comes in that obviously you still have to do the deliveries by yourself, so you actually hire a person who's going to be actually providing him the car or the bikes or whatnot. So you're effectively working on your own delivery setup. So after 6 months or so, he realized that it's simply not worth it to actually just keep paying all those delivery guys who are actually sitting there. Doesn't matter whether the order comes in or not. That's one thing. Secondly, that the orders are coming in through the marketing by DoorDash and Uber Eats. Those orders won't be coming in, and then you have to actually spend more on your social media marketing and other marketing tactics to actually bring more customers to get more orders. So this is the typical scenario for a small business or like maybe 3-4 restaurants who have got the chain of 3-4 restaurants. Obviously McDonald's, KFC, and all that is going to be different, but Chick-fil-A and all that. But for the small businesses, it's a predicament that either they should save like 25% on the actual delivery part, but in return they are not just getting a delivery; they are also getting the orders. So that's the inside information I can share here. That's what we have done. We have gone through it.
Okay, so here we go. Next up is Deep Vision, which develops AI accelerator chips and software for edge computing workloads, raises $35 million. From Tiger Global, Strong DM, which builds tools to manage servers and databases, raises $54 million from Tiger Global. Persona, an identity verification startup used by DoorDash and Robinhood and Square, raises $150 million, led by Founders Fund at a $1.5 billion valuation. So we got a identity verification unicorn already, of which there will be more to come. That's going to be a very interesting space, as you know, if you follow us here daily. And Reliance AI, which builds tools to help companies comply with privacy laws, raises $25 million. So this whole AI thing, I'm still kind of. And here's the next one. These are in a preset list. I'm Constructor, which helps companies optimize e-commerce listings using AI, raises 55 million. Pretty much every company these days is a whole big percentage of them are using AIs that they themselves don't fully understand. And well, even the key person in the company responsible for it, which is usually just a couple people, even they don't truly understand it, let alone the CEO for sure doesn't understand it. Nobody in the executive team understands it. So, just, again, kind of touching back on that earlier point.
It's worth remembering as when we say powered by AI as well, there's different levels of that. Sometimes it might be an in-house actual modeling system, and a lot of times it's just going to be that the company uses a third-party search engine that happens to have some sort of AI component, so they can slap the words, the letters AI on their product. So it's not always necessarily a world-altering Skynet that each of these companies are developing.
And hold on one second here. Where was the video that I saw? No. Okay. So the next one is, where is it here? Xiaomi launches their iPhone competitor the day after the iPhone, the 11T and the 11T Pro, for 649 euros. The phone charges 100% in 17 minutes. And that's pretty much your big boring headlines that everyone.
Did you have a better
Yeah,
dream
no,
tonight?
about really sweet sushi. No. Then so that's the boring headlines at the moment. So now we get into the tweets. And Elon Musk and Tesla devotee Cathie Wood says that Bitcoin's going to $500,000 in the next 5 years. And Franklin Templeton files for a $20 million blockchain venture fund. And what else do we got here? Anti-Bitcoin protests escalate in El Salvador Independence Day. Thousands took to the streets in El Salvador, and many were protesting against the country's new Bitcoin law. Uh-oh. And Clubhouse has hired an NPR veteran as head of news, Nina Gregory, senior editor for NPR's Arts Desk, who has worked for the nonprofit media organization since 2006, is joining Clubhouse as its head of news. And the next one's from Poppy about climate change. Water risks highest in Asia, says Moody's report. And this is my kind of headline here. So it says the Moody's report said risks are more pronounced for water-intensive sectors like mining, agriculture, and power. Water management risks tied up to the existing supply of quality issues, as well as risks amplified by climate change, pose credit challenges across multiple sectors in Asia, particularly in parts of South and Southeast Asia, where water scarcity or mismanagement is already prevalent, said a report released on Wednesday. According to the report by Moody's Investors Science, blah, 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 blah. So, next one, Google sets new water goals as droughts worsen. And retweeting all of these as we always do. And what are they talking about here? With drought sucking the western U.S. dry, Google announced new plans to protect vital water resources. Google guzzles up water to cool its data centers, and Google laid out 3 strategies to accomplish the goal of to replenish 120% of the water it consumes, which is nice. Hopefully they all do that. So the next one, drought puts 2.1 million Kenyans at risk of starvation, from The Guardian. That's a lot of people. More than 2 million people at risk of starvation due to drought. National disaster declared as crops fail after poor rains and locusts, while ethnic conflicts add to the crisis. The estimated 2.1 million Kenyans face starvation due to a drought in half the country, which is affecting harvest. The National Drought Management Authority said people living in 23 counties across the arid northeastern, and coastal parts of the country will be in urgent need of food aid over the next 6 months after poor rains between March and May this year. The crisis has been compounded by COVID-19. The affected regions are usually the most food insecure in Kenya due to high levels of poverty. As heartbreaking as this headline is, this is going to be like buy now, pay later, or Indian unicorns. Unfortunately, the droughts are going to lead to a lot of famine and a lot of starvation in the near future. Very unfortunately, but this is where all the data points are pointing to. So this headline, sadly, is not a surprise. And if you look at the projected, water distribution in the months and years to come, this is going to get exacerbated rather remarkably. And you're going to have I've said before, millions and millions and millions of people across North Africa, all the way through the Middle East, all the way to Western China, are going to have to relocate. We're talking tens of millions of people. So this 2 million of Kenyans who are at risk of starvation, well, obviously they likely have to relocate, or you could bring in food there. That isn't going to fix the problem, unfortunately, because you can't continue to bring food to a place that.
What about the wild animals?
Yeah, please
Can I
do,
chime in
Mabana.
here?
To them then.
Sorry, I don't speak
Yeah,
much. I just listen. But I'm in northern Tanzania, which is
yeah,
not too far from Kenya. I can drive there. And pre-pandemic, I used to go almost every month, 4-hour drive, and I can see the change from Tanzania to Kenya. Because Tanzania, it's not as
yeah.
semi-arid as Kenya is, at least as you come in. So I'm quite lucky. But I've moved into a new house which I've been building, and the river next to me is is flows all year round, but this year, I think it's only got about less than a meter flowing. And this is the height of dry season. That's why this headline is quite important, because dry season is kind of ending now. That's kind of where, also the migration happens as the wildebeest start to move from between Masai Mara and Serengeti. But yeah, so the short rains, which typically come in October, and September, October, if more recently they've been kind of very unreliable and even sometimes failing. And so this year, if the short rains don't come on time, this could get a lot worse. Yeah, so just wanted to kind of chime in on that side. It is worrying, and also another thing, kind of on the economic side of things, Tanzania for the first time had a trade surplus with Kenya. Like, this has never happened, like in, I think, 30 or 40 years, because Kenya is more commercial and typically exports to us, and we import from them. But this year we've been exporting, guess what? Food to them, right? And so we had a boom in food exports to Kenya because they need it from us. But I don't know how long that lasts. As that desert or aridness expands down towards us, we may both be screwed. But I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
May I just make a,
Yeah.
a gentle kind of observation? I heard someone ask about the animals, and, sometimes I personally struggle with that. I think back to Hurricane Katrina in the US, and, just maybe some conversations that I had with some people who had power to potentially do things, but, rather than place their focus on the people who were fleeing, they placed them, on the pets that were left behind. And so maybe this is my own personal trigger, but, I think that the animals will naturally know how to migrate to other locations. But I would hope that our emphasis in terms of mitigation would be focused on the human populations.
Okay. Amazon's creating a point of sale system to compete with Shopify and PayPal. And then we also, really interesting kind of revelation yesterday in the room here, that it's well known that they will use their Amazon One system, which is a palm reader, for authentication, which they do use in their Amazon Go stores now and into Whole Foods where they're rolling it out. But this POS system, that's how you pay for things, right? And I didn't really put two and two together. So if Amazon's your payment point of sale, that's what POS is, it's your cash register, essentially, although now it's an iPad, and then however you pay. Well, Amazon has their own payment authentication method, which is called Amazon One, which is your palm on a piece of glass. So I think it's a fairly safe assumption, wouldn't we agree, that this POS system is a way for them to roll out their Amazon One, is going to be bundled with this point of sale system? Yes, that's common sense. Is it not, class? Yes, it is. Right.
Absolutely.
So if they just found a very clever way to get their palm reading thing all over the place in all kinds of stores. And never mind the fact that they get all of the shopping data and consumer data of everything that you're selling in that city and at what times of day and what times of year, and the customer and what they're buying. And now they're going to start sending them ads to go directly to Amazon, and, goodbye your little company. So on top of that, this palm reading authenticator where you just pay with your palm. You say, here's my card. Great. Touch the glass. Boom. You're done. Lovely, lovely experience. We heard from Eric IO, who joins us regularly in our last meeting, that he believes, well, even his team apparently and others are working on the engineering of being able to get genetic data from there's certain fingerprint readers that are able to extract some sort of genetic data. Chris, can you help fill in the blanks there?
Basically, what Eric said is that they're using some kind of microwave to be able to get genetic parts of your certain parts of your genetic code to like vibrate or shake, and being able to detect that. And what Eli threw out there is basically, yes, that's true, but there's so much crap that you have to get through, that he thinks the technology is far away. I personally, I think that the technology is closer to what Eric says than what Eli says, and I'm not trying to stir things up. It's just you're going to hear the word microwave resonance very often in the future. It's just a phenomena that happens, but it's just going to be very common use because so many things are going to use microwave resonance in the future.
I vote for every time we use this our palms that we actually also get a reading on how many lifetimes we're going to have and how long we're going to live and a little future tidbit, like real.
Yeah, I was thinking the tarot
I'm
reading, right?
okay with that as long as you give me some tidbit on my future.
Free.
My love life too. Like, tell me what my love line's gonna do.
So I was in that room earlier today where IO
Yeah.
kind of talked about this, and it was a mathematical model for vibration behavior analysis of DNA using a resonant frequency of DNA for genome engineering by Marvey and Gondry. If anybody wants, I can text that to him. But the thing that was weird, that I scanned it, and again, it's above my pay grade, but it not can only read. In the paper, it says it can also write. Exactly. So there you go.
Hold on. I have a special sound file for that kind of thing.
Well,
I'll take
everybody,
20% off of my purchase if Amazon wants to put an ad in my DNA. I don't mind.
I have the unique urge to
everybody,
go spend all my money on Amazon Prime now.
DNA is just four characters, so it is very easy to rewrite it.
So I'm sure the vaccine hesitancy folks will have a heyday with that one.
Yeah,
Jokes
it's not a
aside,
good
though,
time to
quickly.
do
Well, by
that.
the way, it's already just a
Sorry,
little.
Chris.
Carl,
One
hold on.
thing that
It's already just a little too close. I mean, if you think the vaccines are scaring, the vaccine hesitancy community, this palm thing, is Dave on stage? Irish Dave? Because the palm thing is, evangelical Christians, of which I grew up in such a. I went to a private Christian school. We read the Book of Revelations very regularly, and it says in the Book of Revelations you won't be able to buy or sell anything without the mark of the beast on your right hand.
Yep.
So you're going
Yep.
to have millions and millions and millions of people already very skeptical from the word go about a palm scanning way to pay for anything. So, let alone the idea that it does anything with your DNA. You're going to have riots in the streets over this. It's wild. It's going to be very wild. Like I said, there's a lot of people who think that that the mRNA vaccines are somehow related to this, but this is just even far more too close for comfort for most people based on their interpretations of Apostle John's book of Revelation, or Paul's rather. I'm trying to recall if it was Paul or John who wrote it. Anyway, so the next one. Most Australians see shopping as in store, not online. Shopify says. Okay. Well, that will change quickly. And Adobe jumps into e-commerce payments business. We covered that. And VR fun in bed. Somebody found a VR system that works while you lay down. You strap it to your feet. It's quite interesting, but you have to see it in the tweet I just wanted. And everybody's talking about the UN urges moratorium on AI use. I mean, my goodness, time.com, and then everyone's tweeting that one in. Bitcoin above 47,000 level, and there's a whole getting very volatile in Bitcoin land because of Bloomberg's headline says billionaire Cohen to invest in new crypto trading firm. All kinds of interesting movements happening in that space. And 1 in 500 Americans have died of COVID. These states and groups have been hardest hit, according to the Washington Post. And what else? The government helped Tesla conquer electric cars. Now it's helping its competitors. And it's because Obama actually gave a big kind of loan to Tesla when it was in its earlier days, which proved to be very helpful. And now Biden seems to be more in bed with his competitors who are trying to catch up in the EV space that are run by unions, and Tesla's non-union. And so they're kind of leaving Tesla out in the cold a little bit in some of their recent events and whatnot. Whistleblower to continue testimony in the Elizabeth Holmes trial. Former Theranos employee Erica Chung will testify in the Theranos trial. That will be interesting. And New York Times has a headline a few hours ago: smartphones may be too good. Smartphones have been so successful that it's possible new technology won't be able to displace them. Zuckerberg would argue differently about VR and whatnot. And I have to imagine they reference VR and AR. I mean, on the face of it, if you look forward any amount of time, 10, 20 years, we've had predictions by people who are in this space who say that contact wearing AR, where basically your phone only takes up a very small view of your eyes, right? I mean, it's a small box in your whole field of vision, quite small. Wouldn't it be optimal if you could imagine in the far future wear a contact lens and your phone interface is floating in the air, arm's length in front of you? Everything that you would want as a dashboard is just floating magically in the air. That's gonna happen. That's coming.
I think by then, though, Tyler, it's going to be BCI,
Well, my
right? I
point
mean,
is, however it's done, either by BCI or by a contact lens, or in the short term, it'll be done via glasses. There's already glasses. Google Glass started doing that 10 years ago. But make no mistake, geeks and innovators are going to manifest that reality, guaranteed. There's billions of dollars and some of the world's smartest people all working on that, committed to doing that until it happens. So it's going to happen. So embrace that inevitable reality. So the question is, when that happens, whenever it happens, maybe it's 100 years. I can assure you it's less than 100 years. Experts estimate between 10 and 20. So let's call it 20. Are we still going to have smartphones when we have that in 20 years? So to reflect back to this headline from the New York Times, smartphones have been so successful, it's possible new technology won't be able to displace them? Huh? Do you not realize what's coming in 10 to 20 years that will make smartphones look like fax machines, where you'll be able to think a thought and have it appear holographically, so realistically, floating in front of you as a 3D model, as an AR object?
What I think is more likely is that where's the processing power for any of these UBIs or the glasses or for the contact lenses? There needs to be a processing unit for that, and that's where phones are going to go to. I believe it's like that for a period. They're going to be the battery source for the
the edge
processing unit and
computing,
graphics.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because that needs to happen somewhere, and you can't plug all of that into your head.
Yeah, I don't. It's not a geek who wrote that.
And
I just don't like geeks writing headlines about tech that.
No, you're right, because they can't predict 5 years
They're
from now.
having trouble digesting what's happening right now. So to say smartphones are so successful, it's possible new technology won't be able to displace them.
Especially with the
That's
exponential
just
era.
a very logically error-filled headline for the New York Times. You need more geeks writing at the New York Times. I understand geeks don't want to work there anymore because it's become, kind of unwelcoming. New York Times, you're not very welcoming to geeks. You make us feel uncomfortable and uneasy and unwelcome and unequal and excluded. So maybe that's why you're having a hard time writing articles about tech. Just a thought.
I remember, I remember about literally it was probably like 18 or 20 years ago at the Javits Center in New York. I actually met a guy who was working on these glasses where you actually would just kind of, in the corner of these glasses, you would look left, and you would see your phone or your computer or whatever, and it was kind of big and clunky, and you had to kind of have the strap. I walked around with it. This is 20 years ago. I walked around with that at the Javits Center with those glasses, and I couldn't believe the technology back then was just so awesome. I couldn't wait to see it, but only now, like you said, just maybe 10 years ago they started coming up with these glasses that now they have them, but it's inevitable, and I can't wait for it to come because it's part of where the future is going to go, and I think it's going to be a great thing. But I saw a little bit, I got a little glimpse of how this can look. I mean, I experienced it myself in these classes, and it was just incredible back then. So I can't even imagine what they're doing now.
I think Tyler's been taken.
Sorry about that.
For everybody?
Thank you, Carl. The BBC headline says Facebook under fire over secret teen research as it had evidence Instagram was harmful place for young people, but failed to share its findings. And so the BBC is reporting on the Wall Street Journal, and this is what journalists do: is they start to dogpile on big tech. And in this case, the jury's. I don't know that it's still out. Facebook. We have to wait for Facebook's comment. I'm going to withhold. I mean, I haven't really withheld judgment. I'll be the first to admit I've kind of come out as claiming Facebook's guilty here, but I am eagerly awaiting Facebook's comments about this. In the kind of court of public opinion, they deserve to have their say. Although the head of Instagram did take to Twitter and he said it paints them in a negative light, but he didn't really refute it either. It's interesting, but more importantly, let's see what they do with it going forward. But that isn't really the issue. The issue is they knew, and anyway, it's complex. But there could be the real interesting revelation today. The Wall Street Journal didn't really have a new fifth day in a row of headlines, although there's more to come for sure, as they've said. But the new revelation is that there already is Congress members already trying to make movements to address this as a result of the Wall Street Journal's articles. So, Bitcoin protest in El Salvador, we covered that. And Tomoko from Japan sends in one about our friend Masayoshi-san, the head of SoftBank. Masayoshi-san at SoftBank World 2021 talked about the key to recover Japanese economy is smart robots. Many know how Pepper failed, which was SoftBank's robot. Yet, TV series a bit ago sponsored by SoftBank that already showed robot with.
That's my
What?
comment. I've seen the
Yeah, I'm reading your comment, Tomoko.
okay.
Yeah.
It was a bit
Yes.
Okay.
But Masayoshi-san at SoftBank, one of the world's biggest tech investors, maybe the biggest, quite possibly the biggest, is also has what he calls a 300-year plan. And he doesn't look 10 to 20 years in the future with, the contact lens scenario we were just describing. He claims he looks 300 years in the future, and that's how he does his billion-dollar investments. And he sees a world full of robots. And so he says at their own big event that they just had that the key to Japanese economy recovery is smart robots. And he is probably right in the case of Japan. Japan loves robots. They're going to embrace robots. So, and that could be a huge benefit for them. They've had a head start on robots for a very long time. So if they continue and really focus on that, China's dealing with their declining birth rate, and if they don't fix it, they might be very keen buyers of Japanese robots technology, because different countries can focus on different things. Israel is a world leader in cybersecurity. Some other, fintechs are disproportionately based in London and Stockholm and a few other places. San Francisco does what it does. There's different areas that focus on AI, other areas focus on crypto. If Japan really dives deep into robotics, and other people, and they are the first to need them because they have the world's oldest population, that could be their financial windfall in a way if the rest of us don't follow along. So I think he could be right. It could be very interesting.
And especially because many of Japanese companies do not release any press release in English, so that may rest of world haven't much realized that how much Japanese robots has been advanced already. But one of the researchers in robot I've been discussing a couple of times actually moved from California to Japan to do the research because he thought Japan is the most advanced researched in the robot area. So that I do also believe that the robot is one of the solution for us to have the aging society.
Yes, so Tomoko's right. As every Japanese person knows, Japan has, as I said, a huge head start on automation. They've had fully automated restaurants, lots of them, for a very long time. So, I mean, the rest of the world's just starting to get into the automated restaurants. They just announced in the past 48 hours, the convenience stores are going to become cashierless, 1,000 of them as a test, and then no doubt they will be all cashierless very soon. Japan loves this type of stuff. So I don't.
And also, I think cultural-wise, they prefer predictability.
Yeah, and the efficiency of it. Both sides like it. The restaurant owner really likes having the automated restaurant, and the customer actually, in a way, in some sense, prefers it. So it's they're going to really lead in this full automation, robotization. They fetishize robots there. Just to give you, it's one of the only countries that fetishizes robots to the degree that they are the movie and comic book heroes are robots. It's hard to overemphasize how much Japan endears or positive associations with robots. So that takes us to the top of the hour. Oh, one last one. This is a doozy. Ford and Argo AI partnered up to do autonomous taxis. And now the headline from CNET says Ford and Argo AI will deliver your Walmart order in an autonomous car. The autonomous delivery service will launch in 3 cities to start and includes groceries and other popular items ordered online. And did I tell you so? Did I tell you? I told you. How many times did I tell you? I told you at least 10 times this was coming, and now here's the headline. September 15th. Ford and Argo AI will deliver your Walmart orders in an autonomous car. The autonomous delivery service will launch in 3 cities. Which cities? Austin, Miami, Washington, D.C. may receive their next Walmart, or citizens of Austin, Miami, and Washington, D.C. may receive their next Walmart order from an autonomous car. On Wednesday, Ford and its self-driving technology partner Argo AI announced a new last-mile delivery service with Walmart. The 3 companies will launch the service in 3 cities as a pilot program as each looks to expand their footprint with these sorts of emerging operations. There it is. Here it comes.
So Tyler,
I was going to just say, you said Washington, D.C., and there's going to be a big rally at the weekend, and Capitol Police are being helped by National Guard.
Okay.
I thought you might.
So another
on this automation, though, I know from the top down it looks really good, but do you think this is going to be a challenge, like making sure that the recipient's actually there?
I don't think so. You're going to know that car is ready to leave the facility. Are you ready to receive it? The kind of thing. I think that's.
I know, but like right now it's convenient. But when we get back to work, we're used to showing up and it's on our porch or it's been stolen.
They're going to
having
2 things.
Having to coordinate with
there's a lot of. Go ahead, Lakeisha. Real quick, there's a lot of solutions underfoot with smart locks to lock objects to near your front door area, lockers in front door areas, getting access to your trunk of your car as a holding space. And different cities have different solutions, but there's no shortage of thoughts on that. So I don't think we're going to get blindsided on that front.
Like pizza makes sense. You have to be there to get a pizza.
Yeah, I was just going to add to Tyler's point. I know maybe a year ago, 18 months ago, Amazon was experimenting with that, in terms of actually leaving packages inside of people's homes. Some of my colleagues, helped to build out that project. So I anticipate that they are, kind of looking into those types of solutions if this were to roll out.
But the autonomy solves the human driving the vehicle problem, but you still have the last meter issue. And so you usually need to be there to receive it in real time, or that autonomy doesn't give you any advantage because all of a sudden they have to schedule it to know when you're there. And maybe that's the solution. Maybe that's the solution. But like I said, it's just, it's not like a complete, like, this is over solution yet until there's a little Johnny Five robot or whatever that comes out and drops it at your door.
Yeah, they'll definitely communicate with the receiver before they start the journey, Chris. No worries.
Okay, so it also mentions that Ford and Argo AI already worked with Walmart in the past, and the automaker is also busy testing autonomous cars with Lyft in Miami, which is also one of the three cities. So Miami has, through Ford and Argo AI, Lyft autonomous taxis and autonomous deliveries. Here it comes. And it's not a coincidence that it's Miami, because Miami is the mayor there, Antonio Suarez, or if I written his name correct, really wants to show that they are, the new Silicon Valley, and trying to become very geek friendly. And this is one way to do that for sure. So that brings us to the top of the hour, just past the top of the hour. So we will meet again in 6 hours with a whole bunch of new headlines. And thank you to everybody for another fun headline-filled tech news around the world.